What if one short comment from Lemmy in the 1980s explains why heavy metal feels so different today? Listen to Lemmy have to say when he was asked in the 1980s how heavy metal had changed.
Now, heavy metal itself, has it changed throughout the years or what?
Oh yeah, I guess it has. I mean, in the old days it wasn't called heavy metal, it was called heavy rock, you know.
So what is the difference?
I think there's more young guys now, and the other bands were all made up of people out of bands like Deep Purple, for instance, was made up out of Episode 6 and another band, right, who sort of amalgamated. And Blackmore was in Screaming Lord Sutch's band, you know, so that all came out of older guys, but the new wave, so-called, of British heavy metal is mostly guys, it's the first band they've been in.
What Lemmy is saying there is that the original heavy metal bands came out of other musical foundations. The people who created them in Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin originated in blues-based bands, and the bands that came later were based in the foundations of heavy metal, and this makes a big difference in the way that the music is generated, the way that it's listened to, and the way that expectations are set. Let's dig in a little deeper here and talk about the first three heavy metal bands that are generally acknowledged. This would be Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and Deep Purple. When these bands started, they weren't metal musicians. They were blues players and psychedelic experimenters, and they were hard rock bands that were pushing volume and distortion and power chords. Metal wasn't a genre. It was an accident. It was a mutation. Tony Iommi was riffing on blues shapes. Jimmy Page came from session work and blues background. Ritchie Blackmore was based in classical leanings. They didn't protect the heavy metal genre. They didn't define the heavy metal genre. They discovered it in real time. And because they came from outside influences, metal's DNA was a hybrid from the very beginning. And that's one of the first points that Lemmy is making. If metal started as a collision of outside influences, what happens when musicians grow up inside the genre instead? Well, this was the next wave. Metallica, Slayer, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. By the 80s, something changed, and it's exactly what Lemmy was pointing to. Kids grew up listening to Sabbath and Priest. They didn't stumble into metal, they chose it, and metal became faster, more technical, more self-aware, more codified. Subgenres exploded. There was thrash, speed, power, death, and this is when metal stopped being an experiment and became an identity. And when a genre becomes self-aware, it begins to define rules. So do you think metal became stronger when it became self-aware, or did it lose some of its unpredictability? Let me know in the comments down there. Now, the next point is now. And this is where it gets really interesting. Today's metal musicians didn't just grow up on one wave. They grew up on 70s proto-metal, 80s thrash, 90s extreme metal, 2000s metalcore, and on and on and on. Metal is now multi-generational. It's studied, archived, streamed, analyzed. You can learn every Sabbath riff on a YouTube video. You can analyze every Metallica solo. But metal isn't an underground discovery anymore. It is a tradition. This is where the big question comes in. When a genre becomes an inherited tradition, does it still have the ability to surprise? Early metal innovated by accident. 80s metal innovated through escalation. So how does modern metal innovate? Well, there are some ways. Technical escalation, we're seeing that. Extremity, heavier, darker, faster, we're seeing that. Fusion, which is bringing in outside genres again, we're seeing that. But the irony is, the most innovative modern metal often sounds like it's trying to grip the 70s again because it's pulling from the same influences. In a strange way, metal may be returning to its roots. So is the future of metal in protecting tradition, or is it in breaking rule? One of the things about metal is that it was never based on trends. It was never based on fashion. It is designed to be an enduring genre. So what Lemmy understood about metal is very crucial. It's not about distortion and speed, it's about attitude, and attitude often comes from friction, from different worlds colliding. So if everyone grows up inside that same world, friction becomes harder to find. That might be why truly shocking new metal movements are very rare today. But it also means something powerful. Metal has survived long enough to be a tradition, and traditions continue to evolve, but often very slowly. So maybe heavy metal didn't lose its edge, maybe it just kind of matured, and maybe the next revolution in metal won't come from someone trying to sound more metal, but from someone bringing in something completely unexpected. Lemmy saw the shift when that first happened back in the 80s. The question is, when will we see the next shift? And maybe we're in the middle of one right now. What was the last metal band that truly surprised you? Drop the name below. I'm curious to know what you think. And as the genre as a whole goes, let me know what you think about metal as a tradition and revolution down in the comments below.
MusicGuru here, asking you to help us on our march to 10,000 subscribers.